Welcome in. It is week 10 of the NFL season, and this is Run the League. We are talking waiver wire today, so let's go find who is the next hidden gem. Let's do it. Okay, guys, welcome in to week 10 of Run the League and of the NFL season. Of course, be sure to check out our Stardom Situm episode of Run the League, which comes out later tonight or tomorrow on Wednesday. And of course, the Fantasy Football Show, which comes out on Thursday in the morning. So lots of options to get your fantasy football content and be able to truly run your league as the playoffs are almost here. So let's start with the quarterback position. Some of the top streamers this week. I really like Carson Wentz. He continues to improve and show that, this Indianapolis Colts offense can thrive with him at the quarterback position. It's also a very opportunistic matchup as they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know the Jaguars played really well against Josh Allen and the Bills a weekend ago. I don't expect that to continue. The Colts can actually run the football, which is something that the Jaguars have really struggled with. And Carson Wentz has shown when they get into the red zone, he's more than willing to throw touchdowns to the tight end position or to Michael Pittman as well. So really like him this week. I also really like Matt Ryan against the Dallas Cowboys. I think both of those guys are good streaming options that you can pick up off the waiver wire, and they can potentially lead you to a win this weekend. Two other names, and these are kind of hidden gems, and I've talked about them a little bit off and on, but I think they're guys that you really need to pay attention to as the season progresses. So the first is Taysom Hill, quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Eventually, he will get the starting quarterback job. They just paid him this offseason. There's no way they're going to have him sitting behind Trevor Siemian the entire year. I think he will get his shot now that Jameis Winston tore his ACL. I think Taysom Hill will be a guy who steps in, comes into his own. And last year, every single start he had, he was a quarterback one. So inside the top 10 a year ago. And that's just because of his running upside and the things that he can do in that offense that are huge. Rushing touchdowns are big for the quarterback position. So he's a guy long-term, season-long, I think can really help your roster. It's just a matter of when, not if, he gets the starting job in New Orleans. The second name is Trey Lance. So the 49ers continue to struggle. They continue to lose football games. They just lost to the Colt McCoy-led Arizona Cardinals a weekend ago. That's a bad look. And Jimmy G continues to not get the job done for them at the position. I think this is one of those situations where Trey Lance will eventually be the quarterback for the 49ers. But it's a matter of when, because if you pick him up now and he doesn't play for the next 3 weeks, then you're sitting there and going, okay, what do I do with this guy? If I can't play him, what do I do? This is all about upside. This is all about you have your stable quarterback and you're taking this guy, Trey Lance, to be a high upside guy who maybe at the end of the year really flashes for your team and potentially leads you to a championship. Okay, moving on to the running back position, there's a few names that I really like this week. So the first one is Kenyon Drake. So 3 straight top 11 performances since John Gruden left the Raiders is what Drake has done. He's been very, very good. They've been throwing him the football. He's just a guy who I think is continuing to get better. They paid him this offseason. They clearly wanted to use him, but they didn't at the beginning of the year. Now it's more of a committee with he and Josh Jacobs. That bodes really well for Kenyon Drake. And when you're talking about 3 straight weeks inside the top 11, it's hard to find running backs who can do that pretty consistently, and Drake's been able to do that over the past few weeks. So he is my top add. If he's on your waiver wire, I would definitely try to add him. I think he could be a guy who at the end of the year, you look back and go, man, he played really well in the second half of the season, and it helped me maybe win a championship. And I think he's a guy who gives you that probably low-end RB2, high-end RB3 upside for the rest of the season, which makes him a very valuable pickup this week. The other one is Jordan Howard. The Eagles running back has been really good over the past 2 weeks. He's had 12 or more carries and a touchdown. The issue with him is obviously Miles Sanders will be back probably in the next couple weeks. And this offense, it really comes down to game script. In the past 2 weeks, they've had a great game script for running the football. The question is, will that continue? So over the past 2 weeks, Jalen Hurts has thrown less than 15 passes each of the last 2 weeks. And because of that, the running game has really taken a shape and taken a form. They've been able to hand the ball off because the games have been close. Well, the first, 8 or 7 weeks of the season, Jalen Hurts was averaging over 33 pass attempts a game. That's where the kind of divide is with Jordan Howard. So I like him this week, but I think going forward, he's not a guy that I'm going to spend a ton of fab on just because I don't think it's going to be consistent for the rest of the season. And obviously Miles Sanders coming back also throws a wrench into those plans. A couple of other guys I like and you need to pay attention to. Ramondre Stevenson. If Damian Harris is out this week, Stevenson had over 100 yards of total offense. He would probably be the starter along with some combination of Brandon Bolden and J.J. Taylor. But I think he would be the guy if Harris does miss this week, which means Stevenson will be pretty valuable and could fall into the end zone for a touchdown, give you an RB2 type finish on the week. I like Nyheim Hines, the Colts running back. Marlon Mack was inactive last week. Now, if that's a sign of things to come, that's just going to be Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, that bodes really well for Hines, and he might get those more consistent touches, which has been his problem throughout his entire career. Moving on to the wide receiver position, this is where I think you can really find value this week. I mentioned I like Kenyon Drake at the running back position, but he's the only one I really love, with Hines maybe being the second option there. But at the wide receiver position, there's a lot of value here. And guys who aren't rostered in a ton of leagues who I think can really help you finish the season strong. So the first name that I have to mention is Elijah Moore, the rookie wide receiver for the New York Jets. So he hasn't gotten a ton of targets. That hasn't been the biggest thing for him, nor is he getting all of the snaps. He's getting under 70% of the snaps in their offense. But this past week, he was awesome. Played really well against the Colts on Thursday Night Football. Negative game script is going to help him a ton, and he showed the ability to catch the ball and make a big play after the catch. That's what you want to see in fantasy football, and that is one of those situations where you look at him and you say he's a rookie. It probably took him some time to gain the trust of the coaching staff, and now you could really start to see him ascend into a bigger role in this offense, especially if Corey Davis continues to miss time. Another name to keep an eye on is Michael Gallup, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people dropped him because he's been inactive for quite a few weeks now. But I think when he comes back, he becomes the third option in the passing attack. I think it's going to negatively impact Dalton Schultz, and I think it's going to allow this offense to expand even more. I do think they're missing just one more option, and Gallup is that guy. We saw this weekend against the Broncos, there are some holes in that offense still. And I think if you add Gallup to the mix, that might allow Dak Prescott to really, really take another step during the rest of the season. And Gallup could be a pretty valuable option going forward. I also really like Rashad Bateman. I've mentioned him, the Ravens rookie wide receiver. He continues to get consistent production. And the Ravens are running the most plays in the league, which means he's going to get opportunities for targets. And it makes him a valuable option in a pretty high-powered offense. Two other names to mention. Brandon Ayuk finally had a good week. Everyone's been waiting on him to finally just do something on the season. He did that, scored a touchdown this week. I would add him. I just think he's an interesting option going forward because I do think the 49ers defense is going to give up some points, which could lead to some negative game scripts and could bode well for him, Deebo Samuel, and even George Kittle. So he's an interesting option. Don't go crazy spending fab money on him because I think he is the clear third option behind Samuel and Kittle. But I think he's an interesting one who does have some upside because we've seen the talent before. The other one is Van Jefferson, the wide receiver for the Rams. He actually has the most red zone targets on the Rams football team over the last 3 weeks. He also has the most air yards on this team, even ahead of Cooper Kupp over that time. So he is a guy who is continuing to really get ingrained with this offense. And I think Stafford does want to spread the ball a little bit more. Cooper Kupp's been out of this world, and I think he's going to continue to be a top 10 wide receiver. But I do think Robert Woods and Van Jefferson will eat into that a little bit and maybe take his numbers from historical to really great. And if they can do that, that would give them an opportunity to score a few more touchdowns and makes Van Jefferson a fairly appealing option in fantasy football. Moving on to the tight end spot, Dan Arnold, the tight end for the Jaguars, he actually is second on the Jaguars team in targets since he arrived in Jacksonville. So again, for the tight end position, we're looking for targets. That's pretty much the baseline. If you can get targets, you can usually have a pretty solid tight end. You're not going to have an elite tight end unless the touchdowns happen, but I think he can give you tight end, top 10 production the rest of the season, which if you're hurting at the tight end position, I think he could be really helpful, and he's a must-add this week. If you need a tight end, I think he's the guy that you want to add. The next guy at the tight end position I would add is Pat Freiermuth, the tight end for the Steelers. He caught 2 touchdown passes last night, looked really good. Obviously, Eric Ebron has been out for a couple weeks, and that's led to Freiermuth's ascendance. But the question is, when Ebron comes back, will Freiermuth go back to his original role, or will he take over a bigger role now that he's proven what he can do? I think it's somewhere in between. I think Freiermuth is maybe a long-term option. We'll probably finish inside the top 12 for the season. And he gets the Lions this week, which should be a great matchup. If Ebron misses, Freiermuth could be a top 10 guy this week and really give you great production just like he did a week ago, or not even a week ago, last night on Monday Night Football. Finally, on the defensive side of things, obviously, if you have one of those top 8 defenses, play those guys. But streaming options that I like. The Browns defense versus the Patriots. They played really well this past weekend against the Bengals. I think that continues against the Patriots this week. And then the Tennessee Titans, who, my goodness, were they terrible on defense early in the season. They've turned a corner a little bit. And they take on the New Orleans Saints, who really struggled offensively until the fourth quarter against the Falcons this past weekend. I think the Titans are a pretty interesting option to stream this week against the Saints. Finally, my top 3 matchups to target this week that could be the bonanza matchup that you're looking for. Jaguars versus Colts. Again, I think lots of passing opportunities, lots of scoring opportunities for both sides. I think it could be a little bit of a shootout in what should be a win for the Colts, but as we saw on Thursday night, the Jets were able to put up a ton of garbage time points against the Colts, and if you can get that, you're going to be very happy fantasy-wise. The other 2 matchups are probably going to be a little bit more tightly contested. The Chargers versus the Vikings. I think both teams are going to be able to run the football. They're going to be able to throw the football. I think there's going to be a ton of points in that matchup. That'd be my best bet for a ton of points for the bonanza, the matchup where every single fantasy relevant player has a good week. That's the matchup I would look at. And the final one is the Chiefs versus the Raiders. Listen, eventually the Chiefs are going to figure something out offensively. I have a belief that is going to happen sooner rather than later. And the Raiders have shown they can score as well. So again, I think both teams are going to have some opportunities to put some points up. And therefore, I think people are going to be pretty happy if you have some of these guys rostered. So that's pretty much it on the waiver wire this week. It's not a massive week. There's not a ton of great value, but a few running backs, a lot of wide receivers, and some options that could help you going forward and even be long-term plays for the rest of the season. So this has been Run the League on 365 Sports, the waiver wire episode. Be sure to check out Stardom Situm coming later tonight and the Fantasy Football Show on Thursday. But for Grayson Grunafer, this has been Run the League.